Hello, everybody, and welcome to part two of the Slayer Struggle webinar, which we'll be talking about overwhelm and anxiety today. So, again, just like yesterday, I know you ladies were here yesterday. I'm going to give you everything I can about anxiety in this next little brief moment, and then I'll let you know again how you can work with me further. And the bonus as part of that. So my name is Leslie Evans, and my mission is to empower women to understand that they're limitless and unlock endless possibilities. And I do that combining modern and magical therapies. So if you're wondering what that means, well, I'm a registered psychiatric nurse therapist. I have been for over 30 years. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I am a soul care practitioner, which means that I work within the Akashic records, and I'm a Reiki master. So I've really helped a lot of, actually thousands of people to start to just get on track and create a life that they love over all those years. And so I'm here to share a little bit of my knowledge on anxiety and overwhelm, working in the public mental health system for as long as I have. This was one of my main focuses, and it's really a passion of mine to help people with anxiety and depression to conquer their symptoms and create the life that they love. So we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety today, and I just wanted to share with you just a little bit about anxiety. And so you might hear many terms for anxiety or overwhelm, or many different forms of it. So some people you might hear social anxiety, a general anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, panic, and phobias. And so all of these fall under the anxiety umbrella. And you can also maybe call this overwhelm or stress or anything like that. And they all go under the anxiety umbrella. And for the most part, we use many of the same techniques to help anyone with any of those forms of anxiety, with a little bit of a modification depending on the type. So what happens when we have anxiety or a panic attack or overwhelm? Well, really, when we're having anxiety or a panic attack or overwhelm, it can have all sorts of symptoms. And some of those might be your heart might start to beat really fast. You might kind of feel foggy in the head. Sometimes you feel like you might even be having an out-of-body experience. Your muscles might get really tense and ready to run. Or you might have shallow breathing. So if that sounds familiar to you, then you might have had anxiety or a panic attack. I know that I have definitely had my moments where I've had a little bit of anxiety when I felt very overwhelmed. Here's the thing. When we're having an anxiety reaction or panic or overwhelm, we are going into what's called fight or flight response. And so what that means is that we are ready to either fight danger or we're ready to flee danger. So our body is getting ready to do that. So all of those symptoms, like the heart beating faster, is getting blood to your muscles so that your muscles can work better. If you're starting to get a little bit foggy, it just means that all of your systems are really focused on helping your muscles to work to either fight or flee that danger. Shallow breathing, same thing. We're trying to keep the oxygen in our muscles to keep them working at top form. So why does this happen? Why do we have this fight or flight response? Well, this has been it's a really good system in our body when we're in danger. And, if you think about when you're in danger, you could be walking down a road and you're on a crosswalk and a car comes barreling down. And so you just, your heart starts to race, and in moments you jump off the road onto the sidewalk, and the car passes by and you're left there, sweating and breathing heavy, your heart racing and all of those things. Well, that's what this system is there for, is to help you when you're running away from danger, or maybe you need to fight that danger, like when you think about in the caveman days when we used to have to fight for our food. So in anxiety, your brain is telling your body that you are in a life-threatening situation. And so it's telling you to get ready to either fight or flee. But sometimes we can also freeze when we have that reaction. So why do I think that this is important for everybody to know? Because those body reactions can be really scary when you have them. When you start to, your heart starts to race and you wonder what's going on with your body, it's really just your natural body's reaction to danger. And your brain, even though you're not in life-threatening danger, is telling your body that it is. And so that just gives you a little bit of awareness that when these things start to come on, that you've got to do something to start relaxing that system a little bit, so that you can start to think more clearly and make choices based on clearer thinking rather than being in survival mode. So one of my favorite things to give to people who have anxiety, and I know it seems like sometimes it's really small, but it is the best thing that you can do to lower anxiety in the moment, is breathe. And the reason is, just like I told you, when your body goes into this fight or flight or freeze reaction, you go into this sort of reptilian brain or survival mode, and your oxygen is going into your muscles. And so when you start to breathe and breathe deeply, it starts to bring that oxygen right to the bottom of your lungs, and it starts to come into your brain where you really need it, because that's what will help you come out of that survival mode, is to breathe, bring the oxygen into your body, allow it to go into your brain so you can think more clearly. Now, I know when there's an anxiety reaction happening that your brain will tell you can't breathe in that moment, that it needs to keep shallow breathing. And that's the time where I'm going to tell you, no, it's even more important to focus on your breathing. And one of my favorite techniques to give to people is called 4-7-8 breathing. Now, this is Dr. Weil. You can look it up on YouTube. It's a great breathing technique. And it's great because it lowers your baseline anxiety. So the wonderful thing about this, it also gives you something to focus on other than your anxiety. So you breathe in through your nose, counting to 4, and you hold it for 7, and then you breathe out with a counting to 8. And the way I like to prescribe it, if I was prescribing it, would be do this twice a day, whether you're anxious or not. Do 4 cycles of that breathing. So 4-7-8 breathing 4 times, and then as needed. The nice thing about if you do it twice a day, so morning and evening, then after about 6 weeks, it'll start to actually lower the baseline anxiety in your body. And the other thing is, when you practice it when you're not anxious, it's much easier to do when that anxiety comes on and you're not really sure, you're not thinking clearly. When you have that in your back pocket, it's really great to do. So that's one thing that I recommend to bring that anxiety down in the moment. The second thing I recommend is called grounding. Now, often when we're in anxiety, we're worrying about something that's not happening right now, or it could happen in the future, or there might be something happening. And one of the things that's great to do is really ground yourself into the moment. And the technique I like for this is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you might have heard it being described in different ways. Whatever way feels most comfortable to you, use that. But the one that I like to describe is you describe or you just name 5 things that you see in front of you. So it's cup, computer, microphone, glasses, camera. So 5 things you see in front of you. And then you might name 5 things you hear. So traffic, fish tank, fan, the computer running, the sound of my voice or my breathing. All of those things are things that I hear. And 5 things you feel. Now, this isn't the emotion of, this isn't emotion. This is what you actually feel from a tactile basis. So I feel my glasses on my nose. I feel the breeze from the fan. I feel the chair underneath my legs. I feel my sleeve on my arm. And I feel the floor under my feet. So 5 things you see, 5 things you hear, and 5 things you feel. And then you go down, 4 things you see, 4 things you hear, 4 things you feel. Now, at this point, you can just name the same things. It doesn't matter. You're not looking for different things. We're just looking to bring you back into this moment by noticing what's in front of you. So then 3 things you see, 3 things you hear, 3 things you feel, down to 2 and 1. Now, sometimes when we're really, really anxious, you might not be able to get to 5, and that's okay. You can start at 3. You can go down 3, 2, 1, and then go back up to 5 again and go through it for as many times as you need to bring yourself back in this moment and reduce that anxiety. Now, the other thing is if all that is not working and that anxiety or your emotions are really high, you can use, if you remember the old adage to, splash cold water on your face. Well, there actually is a really good reason why we do that. And so you can use an ice pack or a cold pack or anything like that. And you can put it over your eyes and your nose, this part of your face. Remember to make sure you're protecting your skin with some with a towel and to ensure that there's nothing medically that should keep you from doing that. But when you put that over your face like that and you leave it on there for a few minutes, you actually start to simulate the dive reflex. And why is that important? Well, the dive reflex actually stimulates the parasympathetic system, which is the system in your body that relaxes you. So this helps you from a physical point to be able to reduce that anxiety in the moment. So cold shower also works, all of those things, just to slow down that bodily response that you have going in your sympathetic nervous system, which is telling you that you're in danger. So those are a few of my favorites to give out to help you when you have anxiety in the moment. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a few of the things that I go over in my Slay Your Struggle program. And the first thing is we talk a lot about emotions, and I've been talking about this with a few people over the last few days. I think they've been given a bad rap. We have been told that we need to keep in the positive emotions or the happy emotions and all of those things. And the thing is that emotions aren't good or bad or positive or negative as far as I'm concerned. They just are. And they are simply warnings or red flags to tell us we've got to check on what we're thinking. So the first thing that I think is really important is that we start to become aware of where our emotions are at and stop judging them. Stop judging them as good or bad or positive or negative. They might be comfortable and uncomfortable or pleasant and unpleasant, but they're not good and bad. They just are. And when you start to build that awareness, you can start to feel those emotions at lower levels, because often when we have anxiety, we really only react to it when it's really high. But when we start to build that awareness by checking in with ourselves throughout the day, we can start to know what it's like to feel that anxiety or the, whatever we're feeling at lower levels. And it's way easier to deal with them at lower levels. In fact, I ask a lot of my people to check in 4 times a day, as much as you can, and name 3 different moods. And if you're looking to name some moods and you don't have the names for that, you can look up on the internet. There's a faces emotions document that'll give you some names and some faces to see what the emotion looks like. Or you can just look for emotion wheel just to give you some names. So I ask them to check in 4 times a day and just start to name the emotions that they're feeling, and at least 3 of them, without judging, without explaining why we're feeling that way. Just start to build that awareness. And here's why it's important. I think sometimes we see ourselves as somebody who is depressed, or we see ourselves as an anxious person or an angry person. And there's so much more to us than that. And I'll give you the example of a gal that I was working with that described herself as an angry person because she was often getting mad, and it was really interfering with her relationships. And so I asked her, let's just start building this awareness. What's leading up to it? What's going on? What are the emotions? And when I met with her a couple of weeks later, what she discovered was sometimes she was embarrassed, and that led her to become angry. And sometimes she was scared, and that led her to become angry. And sometimes she was frustrated, and that led her to become angry. So what that did for her was she was able to see herself as someone other than just an angry person. And the other thing she could do is when she started to feel embarrassed or scared or frustrated, she could start to deal with whatever was going on then and bring her emotion down at that point, which is way easier to do than when you're up here and angry. And it also helped her to have better relationships because she wasn't always going to that anger. She was closer with her kids and closer with her spouse and other friends. The second part of the course goes through behavior. So often when we have anxiety or overwhelm, we avoid doing things because of that anxiety or fear. So we avoid doing things because we don't want to feel that anxiety and we don't want to feel that fear. And so it's easier just to not do them. And so one of the things we work on in the Slay Your Struggle program is we look at what's called exposure therapy. And so you would pick something that you're avoiding because of fear or anxiety that you really want to start doing. And we pick that, and then we list all the things that are in that category. We put them in it on a ladder that is rated by you as to what is the most anxiety provoking down to the least anxiety provoking. And then we start with the first one. And you start to consistently expose yourself to that as much as you can, bringing the anxiety down. And then we keep doing that until you're ready for the next rung on the ladder. And you keep exposing yourself to that until your anxiety is lower, and you keep moving yourself up the ladder. This is a really important thing to do, and it's it's important to do with support so that you can keep pushing yourself, because consistency is key. It's called habituation. You want to get used to being able to do this and also showing yourself that you can do it without, without all of that anxiety. So I'll tell you a little bit about Joan, who I worked with, who had a fear of going out to stores. And her ultimate goal was Costco. I'm not really sure, but for her, it was really, she wanted to participate in providing for her family. And right now, at that point, her husband was doing all the shopping and she wanted to start being able to do that. And so we named all of the places that gave her anxiety to go into. And we rated them from lowest anxiety to highest anxiety. And she just started to go into them. I think the first ones were sort of those little pharmacy, drugstore type stores. And so in the beginning, she found that it was a lot of anxiety, even just driving up. So she would drive to the store and then sit in the car, lower her anxiety, and then decide if she was going to take the next step. And for the first couple of times, she just stayed in that parking lot. And then the next step for her was actually going in the door. And she would lower her anxiety and then come back out again. And then she did that until she was ready to take the next step, which was walking around the store on her own. And so she would do that, reducing her anxiety, using some of those tools we talked about. And then her next step was actually picking something and purchasing it. So once she was done with those steps with the first store, she moved to the next store, which was more of a grocery store. And see, she didn't have to really go through sitting in the parking lot for that one because she'd already done that. She started with walking around the store and bringing down her anxiety and then purchasing something. And then she moved all the way up to Costco, which I don't know about you, but our Costco here is very busy at times. But she did it. She really wanted to. And so she did it. So when you're looking at that, you're avoiding things because of anxiety or fear, it's really important to start small and start slow, but do it consistently. The next part that we go through in Slay Your Struggle is thoughts. So our thoughts can tell us all sorts of things, I'm telling you. And they can tell us a problem when there isn't one, or can tell us that there's things that we're better not to do, or they can tell us what kinds of things we can do. And often we believe our thoughts. And here's the thing, they're just thoughts. They're not facts. And so we've got to be really careful to be able to, tell when our thoughts are supporting us or not. And when they're not supporting us, then it's time to start challenging them. So the trick to that is you've got to catch it first. So when you know those emotions are coming up that are unpleasant or uncomfortable, it's a good sign that there's something that's going on with your thoughts that you've got to check. So you catch that thought. What was I thinking just before I felt that? And then you check it. So if the thought is, let's say, if the thought is, I'll never be able to go into a store, you can check that by coming up with facts or evidence that supports that thought, is the first part of it. So it might be that right now you're feeling very anxious and you can't go in. Or you have in the past had times where you couldn't go into a store because of anxiety or fear. And then the next column is evidence against that thought. So that evidence might be, actually, I go into a store, twice a week. Or I have gone into the store several times up to a few months ago. And that is just the evidence against that thought. So then we put together a balanced thought, which might be today I'm not able to go into the store because of my anxiety, but I have gone into that store several times before. Again, we're looking at it in a balanced way so that it feels good and it's believable. And then you know that you can try this again. You can do it again, that it's not an all or nothing. We spend a lot of time here in thought challenging and slay your struggle, because I find this is the part that people find really challenging is checking and changing their thoughts, because sometimes we just believe them so closely. So we spend a lot of time working through this. And really, the more you practice it, the better you get, that you don't actually have to write it all down, except for if it's a big one, that you can start to challenge those thoughts quickly because you're just practicing it more and more. The last part of the Slay Your Struggle program is presence. Often we squeeze out the present with worries about our future, which is often that anxiety or worry, or ruminations about the past, which is often where we find ourselves in that depression. See, now is the only time that we can truly feel, we can truly hear, we can see, we can taste, we can smell. And now is the only time that we can make choices. Now is the only time that we can connect with ourselves and our higher self. And the thing with presence is it really helps with anxiety and depression. And one of the things that I really like to go through in Slay Your Struggle is the attributes. There's 9 of them that John Kabat-Zinn, who's a guru on mindfulness and presence. So we talk about acceptance, patience, trust, beginner's mind, letting go, non-judging, non-striving, gratitude, and generosity. Because these are the attitudes that help us to be in the moment, but they also help us to create the life that we truly love and create a life where we're feeling good and feeling stable. And every week we'll go through a different little presence exercise. And I'll tell you a little bit about a client that I had in one of my programs, and he was off work because of some anger and some anxiety and depression. And he was just like, I'm not sure about this stuff you're teaching us. It just seems out there to me. But he said, I'll give it a try. And so he was heading back to work for his first time in a few months. And the next week he came back after his first week at work. And he said, I was called into the boss's office within a few days of being back at work. And normally when I'm being called into the boss's office, it's not for a good thing. So he decided to use mindful walking just to go from where he was to his boss's office. And mindful walking means that we are just focused on what we're doing to walk. It could be focused on how our muscles are moving us, how we're balancing, maybe the breeze going through our hair, or how our arms are swaying. And we're really focusing our attention there rather on the thoughts that can come up. And so he did that for that few minutes that it took him to get to the boss's office. And when he got in there, his boss just wanted to tell him that he was glad he was back and that he noticed how well he was doing. And, my client just said he admitted he would not have been ready to hear that had he allowed his thoughts to go that entire time. And bringing down his thoughts and doing that few minutes of mindful walking allowed him to be open to what his boss had to say, rather than being ready to defend himself for what he thought might be coming. Now, like I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Slay Your Struggle program. And Marilyn, I just noticed you said you don't have a car to sit in. Yes, you can find a bench or something outside of the store that you can just stay there for that moment. For her, that was what she could do. We can always adjust it to what you have in your life. So the Slay Your Struggle program that I have will leave you feeling a sense of calm and well-being, knowing you have strategies to effectively navigate your anxiety. You feel empowered to take control over your life. You overcome barriers that used to prevent you from going after your goals and doing the things you love. You'll start living a fulfilled life unhindered by the limitations that anxiety used to impose on you. Denise H. She writes, the techniques Leslie shares are practical and easily implemented into a person's busy life. I've been able to work through situations that used to overwhelm me using the tools and step-by-step processes that Leslie taught me. Now, Denise describes herself as an overwhelmed grandmother taking care of a granddaughter. And she definitely had a lot on her plate. And through going through the program, it's made a huge difference for her to be able to set some boundaries, to be able to bring down that anxiety in the moment, and to be able to start doing things that she felt she couldn't do before. And she manifested a house to rent for her and her granddaughter. And she manifested a job that fits into her care of her granddaughter. And she put some boundaries on some really important relationships and help her to feel better about herself. So through the Slay Your Struggle program, we'll meet for 6 weeks in 90-minute group sessions online. It's interactive. This one, I'm talking a lot, and let me tell you, I don't usually like to talk a lot, but I have a lot to go through, so I want to make sure that you hear it all. So it is interactive where you can ask me questions. We do exercises together. And we also talk about how the last week went. Each session is recorded, so if you can't make it, it's there. I'll teach you in detail the presence attitude, how to deal with your emotions, how to do that behavior modification. So exposure therapy, how to challenge your thoughts, and we'll talk about problem solving as well. And there's a private Facebook group where you can ask questions, you can support each other. I also have some worksheets that I've developed that will help you in this process, and you can have. I give you a recorded hypnosis to work on your anxiety from a subconscious level. And I also, just for a treat, do a group Akashic reading to find out any insights from a soul level. Usually that's near the end of the class. So if you've been living in overwhelm or anxiety, I'd like you to take a deep breath and close your eyes. And just imagine in just 6 short weeks, feeling a sense of calm and well-being, knowing you have strategies to effectively navigate anxiety, feeling empowered to take control over your life, a sense of calm. You're overcoming barriers that used to prevent you from going after your goals and doing the things you love. You're living a life, fulfilled life, unhindered by the limitations that anxiety used to impose on you. And you're connecting with the people that you love or new people that are good for you. Now, how does that feel? Go ahead and open your eyes now. I'm going to put a link in the chat. And that's the link to my Slay Your Struggle program. And I invite you to come join me. We're in only 6 weeks. You can make those changes and start to create that life that anxiety no longer controls. Investment is $597. To make it easier, you can make 2 payments of $359. Click the link and join me and see the difference 6 weeks can make when you have the right support. And just like yesterday, I am giving a bonus in today for anyone that signs up today. I'm gifting you an individual session. Now, these sessions are normally $297, and it's a hypnosis session where we'll be able to dig deep into your subconscious to see what's where that anxiety might have started, and to be able to heal it at that point and bring that forward. So that's the bonus. If you sign up today, if you have any questions, please feel free to either unmute and ask me, or you can write them in the chat. I'd love to answer any questions you have, because that is the bulk of my presentation tonight. Is there any questions? Andre, thank you for your comments on the great advice. Yes, these are all wonderful things to help you with anxiety.
Thank you so much. Did you say that there was email? Like if somebody had a question, they could email you as well?
Absolutely. You can email me. You know that, Sylvia. I'm always happy to take an email, and you can email me at, I'll put it in the chat.
I probably already have your email.
You probably do.
Okay.
Yeah, you probably do. And you can email me and ask me any questions that you need to. I'm always happy to follow that up. And if you'd like to talk more, you can also book a free consultation with me.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, Sylvia, Marilyn, and Andre, it's been a pleasure spending this time with you tonight. And I really look forward to working with you. So, join me and let's slay that struggle. All right, everybody, if there's no more questions, I'm going to end the webinar here and wish you a wonderful evening. My name is Leslie Evans. Have an awesome evening. You're welcome. My pleasure.